Hello, dear actors. We are approaching the end of this 3-class crash course on the Stanislavsky method, and I want to thank you all for your interest. No matter how experienced you are as an actor, whether you are new to the performing arts or you have been living the dream with its ups and downs for several years, you should always remember the principles of this method, for it is the most universal foundation of acting techniques suited for performances that aim for realism. My name is Luciana Lambert. I am a Stanislavsky trained actor who started in theater, worked on some TV, and lately have been mostly in movies. Today we are going to get more into the physicality of the technique, covering mostly voice and body work. Just a quick reminder that if you missed lessons 1 and 2, they are available for you to rewatch for free. Find them on Teacup of Wisdom. I will probably do a few sessions soon covering a different topic per session based on the most common questions I get from fellow actors and clients. Those are going to be day-to-day practical tips for actors in using the method as far as character development, scene study, monologues, audition tips, and all that jazz. And my private coaching continues. If you need that, you know where to find me. Now let's jump right on, shall we? We talked a lot about realistic performance. We started with active listening, making sure you know how your character feels and reacts to everything happening in the story, as well as everything other characters say and do. Then we dove really deep into 2 of my favorite performance tools, pauses and silence. The expectation caused by pauses. The way a pause can leave something hanging in the air for a moment, brief enough to steer a plot or subplot in a different direction. And quietness, silence, when a scene culminates a moment earlier and now there's nothing left to say. Also, what's left unsaid, the tool great playwrights use. The audience follows the story via subtext and emotion versus a timeline and logical explanatory dialogue. Let me give you some examples. The classic play by Garcia Lorca, The House of Bernarda Alba. That's a piece I consider mandatory reading for actors. The House of Bernarda Alba. The play starts with the funeral and, spoiler alert, ends with a hanging. The author created an all-female story before it was cool where women endure oppression. The mourning and the emotional restraint openly displayed on stage are a metaphor for other types of oppression, especially political. All the walls are white, all the clothes are black. Bernarda Alba is a matriarch who runs a tight ship in her household by imposing strict rules and curfews, as well as 8 years of mourning for the death of her husband. For that reason, and for reasons of being a woman at a certain time, the characters aren't free to express their desires. However, the audience discovers those desires little by little in the subtext, in the subplots, in the silence. The free spirit in the play is the elderly Maria Josefa, who remains locked in the back of the house. That's a metaphor right there. Contain your joy. Hide it. One of the daughters, Magdalena, represents reasoning and comes off as a bitter woman because reality was sad, brutal. The young woman, Adela, is the heroine pursuing freedom and willing to fight her mother. She represents the youth and the hope in all of us, especially when under severe societal rules that do not allow us to be who we are. Garcia Lorca wrote that piece brilliantly, and when performed, the audience is hooked by what the characters communicate via subtext and silence. And all of the dialogues very contained, but full of a great color palette underneath. All of the meaning is under the darkness. I could talk about that play for days, maybe another time. So read it. I also have to bring up the TV show A Handmaid's Tale, especially the amazing character work of Elizabeth Moss, who plays the heroine June, and several of the actors in the show. What's interesting about The Handmaid's Tale, and I hope you're all watching, is that subtext, things June actually feels and would say if she were not in the situation she is without her freedom. All of those lines and thoughts are heard by us watching because they're voiced over. The thoughts in her head we can follow, but the handmaids, the Marthas, and even most of the wives and some of the commanders, they're never saying what they're thinking. So the actors have to convey a lot via what is left unsaid. By hearing June's thoughts in her head, we're able to understand what's happening in the story, and all of the times she opens a window to the character's soul just by the look on her face are pure magic. So that is another great example of using silence and minimal dialogue to tell the story. Moving on, let's talk physicality. How do you enter the stage? How do you exit the stage? The scene starts to the audience a moment before what they see. They don't know that, but that's how it goes. When the lights are on, whatever starts happening on stage is a continuation of a previous moment. That is the awareness that you must have when your character starts in the scene. Stanislavsky would spend days at a time with an actor in his studio creating the exact moment where a scene starts. In one of the examples described in his first book, he works with an actress to define what the character feels before the scene even starts. It's a scene that's supposed to start with someone knocking on her door. He helped her create the movements according to the thoughts crossing her mind. They came up with her getting ready to leave and being interrupted by the knock on the door. How does that play out in a realistic way? Imagine being a woman finalizing the getting out the door routine. Look at your purse, make sure you have everything you need, grab your keys, and you think, am I forgetting anything? No, I'm leaving now. And suddenly someone knocks. See how much happened before someone knocked. Everything that crossed her mind, her demeanor, checking the purse, reaching for the keys, wondering if she's forgetting something. Look how much you can do as an actor without saying a word. All of that may be played in a couple of seconds or for minutes. You have a lot of material just physically performing someone who's getting ready to leave their apartment. That's going to establish the scene and set the initial tone. When the disruption of that flow happens with someone knocking, it throws her off. It is a surprise to the audience, but it is very relatable. Interruption. Stanislavsky went on with the exercise and had her character open the door to receive some bad news. Now, place yourself in the audience for a moment. You relate to the character getting ready to leave and being interrupted. So your expectation is that she will open the door, resolve that momentary disruption of her day, and then leave as she had originally planned. It is your natural expectation because it is also the character's goal. However, Stanislavsky decided that the people knocking had terrible news for the woman. Her husband had just died. That's the news. Think for a moment. She was just thrown off again. This time not by something mundane, as a letter being delivered, but by news that she was definitely shocked by. As an actor, how do you portray her feeling in the moment when she hears the news? The actress came up with several ways she could react. Other actors in that class, Stanislavsky class, suggested ways she would react, but eventually they realized that all she had to portray was a shock in silence, then closing the door. The subtext, meaning, I'm not going out anymore. That is the resolution of that brief moment. The interruption of the flow was a plot twist, and the character's reaction to it is small. She was going out, and now she's not. Something else happened. Something else needs her attention. How many times in your life did you take moments, hours, or even days to process tragedy that had just happened? Stanislavsky and the actress designed that perfectly after much trying until it made sense, until it became psychologically realistic. Her character, as a matter of fact, needs not saying any words at all through the entire scene. The playwright might as well have simply written on the page, she is ready to leave her apartment and someone knocks. She opens. Someone says, I'm sorry, but your husband just died. She closes the door. End of scene. It took me roughly 9 seconds to read the page. But you can play that scene at any pace, using 1 minute or 10, and guide your audience to the plot twist convey nothing but thought and small emotion. That's the greatness of our profession as actors, being able to tell a story using our physicality and emotional memory, regardless of how many lines we say. So when you prepare to enter the stage, think about that. And please never underestimate the audience. There is nothing more disappointing to an audience than an actor who exaggerates moods unnecessarily. They want to relate to the characters in the scene. Don't make a facial expression they wouldn't do in real life. If you're in shock, you're momentarily paralyzed, and the panic in your face is not widely obvious. Once you find the emotion using your sense memory, believe in it. Let the performance flow. Be constantly aware of where your character is physically going as well as where they have just come from. That will give you the right pace to walk around, the right voice. Don't we speak differently when we just woke up in the morning before having coffee versus when we are introducing ourselves at a conference? In order to find the right pace and the right voice, you need that awareness. Where has my character just been and where are they planning to go? That simple awareness. That can unstick you of many an audition paralysis situations. Next time you have an audition and they ask you to move however you feel the character will move, remember that. Let's talk a little bit about voice work. Some actors, they are confused when it comes to how much voice training they need. And do they need to change their voice for the character? Do they need to lose their accent? Do they need to project their voice, etc.? So let's address these concerns under the Stanislavsky method approach. First and foremost, Stanislavsky's approach to voice work was that the actor's speech has to be organic. Before his work, actors had a presentational style on stage, imitation-based, or you can simply call artificial, fake. For Stanislavsky, the actor needs to sound realistic, and that is far from an eloquent speech from every character. Each character will resemble a real person, therefore will have the voice of a real person with all of its characteristics. He viewed voice and speech as flexible under the circumstances of an actor's imagination relating to the character's psychophysicality and story. Tools the actor must use include speech clarity, breathing properly, and especially sound projection that is adequate for the space where you are performing. For the most part, you will not say your lines inside of a full theater in the same way you would say them in front of a movie camera. Regarding clarity, Stanislavsky's pet peeve was an actor who was not being clearly understood in their speech. If your audience can't hear you when they should be hearing you, if they can't quite put together a meaning out of your words because your speech is not clear, that is going to ruin all the work you otherwise put in developing your character. When you perform, make sure you are understood. And how do I reconcile having an accent with being an actor? That is a common question. If your accent is something you're not trained to neutralize, decide if you should give it a try. Learning to speak with a neutral accent. Understand first that your accent may well be the character's accent in a specific role, or it may actually be part of your brand. Character actors get cast all the time for parts that require an accent. Training your speech, though, is part of your training as an actor. It is important that you learn how to hear your own voice so you have at least basic understanding of how to identify sounds you produce, how to translate those sounds into familiar sounds that your audience will comprehend when speaking with a different accent than your original accent. Maybe your original accent is neutral, is standard American accent, but if it's not, if it's foreign accent or a very pronounced accent, you can simply learn, because an accent can be learned in a very similar way of how you learn to sing a song. You will train your ear first to identify those sounds, cadence, word stress, the word stress particular of, for example, standard American English, and you will rehearse your lines accordingly. Making it organic is not necessarily going to be work done and ready to show in the first rehearsal, but still, you can do it. The more you have the open mind to learn how to use that tool, the easier the process will become. Let's review what I've just said. Your accent is how your brain translates the sounds you hear into familiar sounds that you grew up using. When you speak, the sounds you hear are translated into sounds you're trained to use. So speaking in a neutral American accent, if that is not your natural accent, that is no different than learning to speak English with a Russian accent, for example. Rather than eliminating your own accent, you will throw in some American accent. You will add that accent to your collection by learning it. I know it sounds hard, but hey, it's just brain workout. You can do it. You can do that for any accent. Maybe start by learning a sentence or two at a time in a different accent. Get help from an accent coach or a friend. Start mastering the process of identifying sounds and replicating them. Find a process that works for you. Take on that challenge. Unless, of course, your true accent is either neutral or it's booking you the type of niche work that you are happy with. It's part of your brand. See old school Italian American actors like Robert De Niro or Latino actors that build great characters with their own brand of character work. In conclusion, the Stanislavsky method evolved performance from a mechanical presentation on the stage into a realistic story, taking place in the moment and transporting the audience in a more organic, relatable way. What I want you to take from this introduction to the method is that you have all the tools you need to be a great actor within yourself. All you need to do is work on yourself every day. Read a play, read a script, write notes, ask questions, discuss with fellow actors, explore your voice and movement, discover your niche or your type. There are so many classes on how to find an agent, how to find auditions, but when you are actually called to audition for a part, it will only come down to what you can deliver to the casting director, to the director, as a performer. Are you able to make them see the character lifted off the page of the script and coming alive through you? That's on you. So never stop working, especially now. You have no excuse now to not watch a movie or read a play, self-tape a monologue on your phone and ask for feedback from another actor, or take it to an online acting class. Explore how to enter the stage and leave the stage when you read a scene. That applies to when the cameras are on you and the director says action until he says cut. That is your entering and exiting the stage, but on camera. Invite other actors to do an online reading with you. Learn memorization techniques, learn an accent, 2 sentences at a time. Learn a song. It doesn't have to be perfect. It just needs to wake that brain muscle, like, hello, I have a voice and I'm going to explore its potential now. Do that for me. Do that for you. This pandemic, which is not over, has been teaching us many lessons. One of them is audiences like movies, plays, performances. They need us performers. What would we do if no performances of any kind were available to audiences now? Life would be harder, don't you think? Thank you.